I call the member for Orange.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to talk about a deeply troubling issue, the continuing failures of the Mental Health Review Tribunal, the Mhrt. For far too long, the Mhrt has placed the rehabilitation and comfort of offenders above the rights, voices and safety of victims. Our mental health system must be compassionate, but it must also be accountable. It cannot and must not become a refuge for those who have committed the most serious of crimes to quietly re-enter the community under the veil of treatment while victims and families live in fear. Time and again, the Tribunal's actions demonstrate a dangerous imbalance. The pendulum has swung so far in favour of perpetrators that victims' concerns are often dismissed as secondary, tokenistic or inconvenient. The recent case of Wendy Robinson stands as a shocking example. Wendy's brother Scott Scathing brutally murdered their parents, Ian and Mhrt Scathing, in 2014. And though he admitted to the killings, he was found not guilty by reason of mental illness and placed under the jurisdiction of the Mhrt. Since then, Wendy, a registered victim, has attended Mhrt hearings after hearings, forced every 6 months to relive her family's trauma, simply to plead for her and her family's safety be taken seriously. Yet despite her objections, based on previous violence and threats from Scott Scathing upon their family, recently the Tribunal approved unsupervised day leave for her parents' killer. Even more distressing, he was transferred to a forensic mental health facility in the very region where his family live and work. The Tribunal's official record notes that it removed the place restriction under Scathing's unescorted leave order, dismissing Wendy's submission almost entirely. And as a result, just weeks later, Scathing was observed at a cafe in Wallsend, the same cafe frequented by Wendy's family for the past 7 years. A written complaint was subsequently made, but no action has yet followed that I know of, and the family's fear is now lived a daily reality. What message does this send? That the Tribunal's notion of rehabilitation matters more than the basic safety of innocent people. Sadly, Wendy's story is not an isolated one, and I've spoken with families across our state, families like those of Emerald Wardle and Biddy Porter, who described the same experience, being silenced, sidelined and patronised by a system that claims to offer them input but gives them no genuine say. Victim statements are reduced to paperwork, their presence at hearings is treated as a formality. Meanwhile, offenders are granted day leave, unsupervised outings, even being able to access social media and dating apps. The community is right to ask, how can someone who has taken a life be allowed to walk the same streets or appear on the same platforms as our children, all as part of their rehabilitation and treatment? Mental illness does not excuse the abandonment of justice. Compassion for patients cannot come at the cost of safety for the community. The families of victims are not obstacles to recovery. They are entitled to protection, respect, transparency and input. The Mhrt must be subject to scrutiny, transparency and parliamentary oversight. Past inquiries, such as the Wheelie Review in 2017, have clearly failed to improve the Mhrt's functions with consideration to the victims and broader society. The review found, and I quote, that the legislative test for forensic patient leave and release is appropriate. However, the system is weighed too heavily towards the interests of patients without due consideration for the safety and interests of victims. The Tribunal's role is to balance rehabilitation with public safety, yet it has tipped the balance so far that the scales of justice have all but fallen. Until that changes, families like Wendy Robinson will continue to suffer, not just from the loss of loved ones, but from a system that refuses to protect them from further harm. And Madam Speaker, yesterday I contributed to the bill the government introduced in relation to the establishment of a victims commissioner, which I supported. And I certainly mentioned in that my contribution last night that I would hope that the new commissioner, once appointed, would have a deep delve into the functions of the Mhrt and speak to victims and hear from victims about their experiences in their dealings with the Mhrt, because from what I hear, There is a lot of work to be done, a lot of questions to be asked to ensure the safety and protection of our community and victims. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker,
I
I
call
rise as the
Parliamentary Secretary
Parliamentary
in
Secretary.
reply.
Thank the member for Orange for his realistic conversation about what has to happen with the Mental Health Review Tribunal and some of the shortcomings. I'd also like to personally thank Wendy Robinson for her ongoing advocacy and fight on behalf not just of her own circumstance, but on behalf of so many people who live with the challenge of people out there in the community that possibly shouldn't be. Thank you.